everybody, it's Amy from Northwoods Studio, and if you've been here a while, you've probably seen my video for the worst art advice that I ever got. This video is the opposite of that. And this one, I'm going to share the, I think there's 12, yep, 12 pieces of art advice, the best art advice I ever got, some of which is truly art-changing and maybe even life-changing. So grab yourself something cozy to drink and come on in and let's chat for a little bit. Number one, best art advice I ever got was don't give up. Don't give up. And this is maybe arguably the most important one. Speaking as someone who did give up for a long time, the only thing that guarantees your failure is if you quit. As long as you keep going, there is still the hope and the chance and the possibility that you will succeed. But if you quit, that 100% guarantees that you will fail. So if art is your dream, don't give up. Don't do what I did. Number two, this is also another excellent piece of art advice that I got. You can make money with your art and not be a starving artist. I've already sort of made a video on this. It was called the 15 best ways to make money with your art. I'll link that down below in case you haven't seen it. There's tons of ways you can make money with your art, and it is 100% for sure a viable business and a viable job, especially nowadays with all of the social media and all the changes we've had. You 100% can make money with your art if you're willing to put in the work. And again, I've got that whole video with the different ways you can do that, so if you're interested in that, check it out. Okay, number three, and this is one I've been struggling with this year, but it is very good advice, and that is follow the spark of your passion. So lots of times you will get excited to try a new material or work on a new project or try out a new idea. Try to follow those as much as you can. With my YouTube channel, it's been somewhat hard for me this last year, but I find when I am able to follow that passion or the spark of creativity or whatever you want to call it, I am more prolific. I enjoy what I create better, and I just feel better in my heart. I feel more at peace when I'm following it and more excited about my art, and I just feel more joy while I'm creating. At the same time, like, you know, you have to finish pieces to be an artist, so keep that in mind, but try to follow that spark as much as you can. And that brings me to this next point, which I think is number 4, right? Yes, number 4. There is always an ugly phase, always. About halfway through your piece, at some point you're going to be like, this is so ugly. I don't know even why I'm doing this. This is a complete failure. I should just give up now. This is terrible. I'm such a bad artist. I forgot everything I know. That's the ugly phase, you guys, and you have to push through that. When I was first getting started out, I did not realize that, and I would often give up in that phase, but the reality, the hard reality is apply your butt to the seat. As if that, I think it was, I don't remember who it was. And when I was writing, there was always apply your butt to your seat and work through the hard part, work through it. Because once you come out the other side, 95% of the time you'll be happy with what you did. It may not be a masterpiece, but you'll be happy with it, and it'll be, you know, a decent piece, if not one of your best pieces, because even the very, 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 very best pieces, I can't remember a single piece where there wasn't an ugly phase where I felt unsure about it. So make sure you're working through that ugly phase. Okay, number 5, this is one that I have trouble doing, but I'm trying my best to do it, is don't worry about style. I do believe that as you find what you enjoy, as you find what you're passionate about, what mediums you like, and as you work and grow and work and grow, your style sort of finds you. And, you know, it sort of becomes your recognizable, you know, calling card in your art. I struggled for a long time to try to find my style, but I don't think that's the way it works. I think the more you work and the more you know, find your passions and pursue those, the more your work starts to have that cohesive look that defines you. And yes, I struggle with this one. I've tried very hard multiple times to find my style, thinking it would be like a magic key to unlocking everything for me. Once I found my style, everything would be good, and, you know, birds would be singing and rainbows all the time, and that's not how it works. That's not how it works. It's just your recognizable signature in a painting, and I think it finds you with practice and time. So don't worry about it too much. Just try to create art as often as you can and don't worry about your style. Number 6, I've talked about this many times on here. Use the best materials you can afford. I used to really struggle with watercolors until I switched to Arches paper, and all of a sudden everything did what I wanted it to when I wanted it to do it. Sometimes the materials do make a difference. Not always. There are, areas where it doesn't matter as much. Like my acrylic brushes, that doesn't really matter. As long as they're not shedding hair everywhere and they move the paint the way I want them to move, it doesn't matter. But things like paper and light fast pigments and, just watercolor paints, and it matters, some of those materials, it matters. So buy the best materials you can afford, because you never know when you might create something that you want to last for a long time. And if you've used like paper that's not archival or at least acid free, or if you've used, pigments that are not light fast, you won't have that in 5 years, 10 years. Okay, number 7 is you don't need to go to art school to be an artist. I've made a whole video about this, how you can educate yourself and do art school at home. I'll link that down below as well. I did do art school for probably like a year and a half. And I learned 100% more on my own than I ever did in art school. I've talked about that before and how it was kind of, I have other videos on it, but I'll link the do your own art school video down below. I put a ton of great resources in there. I spent a lot of time like linking books and classes and stuff like that. You can totally do it on your own if you are self-motivated. You don't need to spend the big bucks to go to art school to be an artist. Number 8. Don't compare yourself to other artists. You don't know what their journey was like to get where they're at. Maybe they're a lot younger than you and you're like, oh, I should be doing as good as them. Maybe they've been drawing 8 hours a day, for 5 years, and maybe you're a mom with kids and you can only draw for an hour. Like, they could very well have put in way more time than you've put in. You can't compare situations. It's not the same. And also, sometimes I find that when we're comparing ourselves with other artists, it's really based on the belief that we are not a real artist, or we're, the whole imposter syndrome thing. Miss Dita's making a bunch of noise over there. Sorry, it's almost time for her to come out. Ooh, that's a loud one. So maybe they do something really good. Like, let's say they draw eyes really good, and you're comparing your eyes to their eyes, and but maybe they're not as good at hands as you are. You can't pick and choose like parts to compare. You can't compare their journey compared to your journey because you don't know their journey. And often, some of the time, I feel like we're really hard on ourselves, and we might say like, oh, their work is so much better than mine, and we can't see the own positive and delightful aspects of our art because we're so focused on somebody else's art and feeling like ours doesn't, match up with theirs. I find it's best, like, you can admire people's art, you can feel like this is beautiful, I love this, but don't compare yours to theirs. Okay, tip number 9, this is a good one, is use a mirror. If you're using digital, you can flip your work digitally, but if you're a traditional artist, which is 95% of what I do, use a mirror. Stand like with your back to your work and hold up a mirror and look at the reverse image. It will instantly show you all of your mistakes so that you can fix them. The other thing you can do is also flip your work upside down, look at it upside down. That works as well. For some reason, our brains just read it differently, and we can see all of our mistakes and correct them. So that is an excellent tool. Okay, so number 10, your art doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be good enough that it's convincing. So, especially if you're doing realism, your whole art doesn't need to be 100% perfect. Let's say, like, you do your sky beautifully and you have the beautiful lake reflections and your trees look good and there's a little grass off on the corner and it's not quite right and you can't get it right and you're putting all this time and effort into getting it right. Just stop. Stop where you are. As long as the piece is convincing enough or good enough or interesting enough, nobody's going to really notice the small little areas where things might not be as good as you wanted them to be, and that is true. That goes back to being too self-critical. We will often, the little things that bother us will pop out to us, and nobody else will even notice them until you point them out. So don't point them out. and just let it go. You don't need to be a perfectionist with your art to make a beautiful piece of art. Number 11, this is another good one. Draw what you see, not what you think you see. And that is a really good one. If you've ever watched like a child draw, and let's say, you know, they're drawing the sun, they're going to draw the idea, their idea of the sun. So every time they draw a sun, it's going to be yellow and round with rays of yellow coming off of it. Or every time they draw a pine tree, it's going to be a green triangle with a brown rectangle. That's their idea of a pine tree, or their idea of the sun, and not what they're actually seeing. So part of our job as an artist is to train ourselves to actually see what's there and not what we think we see. You're drawing a person. You draw the eyes exactly the same size and shape. Are they? Because it's very common for people's faces not to be 100% symmetrical or to have differences from one side to the other. Draw the differences. That's what makes you an artist. When you're drawing like a swan and you're drawing the feathers, draw the little bit of blue tint you see in the feathers, or the little bit of peach tint that you see in the feathers. Don't just draw white feathers with gray shadows. Draw what you actually see, not what you think you see. And the best way to do that is, I always think it's a good idea to spend like 5 minutes looking at your reference, whether you're outside painting plein air, or you're working in your studio with a still life, or you're doing figure drawing, or you're working from a photo. Spend some time actually looking at what you're going to be capturing with your art and looking for things, little subtle differences that are different from what you would expect to see, and maybe even write some notes as you go. That's a really good tip, and one that really helps if you're trying to do realistic art, because things aren't always what we think they are up here when we're looking at them. Okay, so this is my last tip, number 12, and this one has been really helpful for me. And that is, when you can't create art for whatever reason, feed your creativity by engaging with other people's art. So whether that's going to a museum and looking at some art, whether it's scrolling through artworks on Instagram, whether it's watching someone create on YouTube, like a time lapse or a teaching video, or whatever, find a way to, I guess, consume other people's art when you can't make your own. And I know there's quite a few people on here who watch me who have chronic illness. I do too. There are times when life is too hard or too busy, or we're not feeling well, and we just can't find the time or the energy to pull out our supplies and actually create something that day. Spend at least some time looking through an inspiring art book, or, you know, watching a tutorial on YouTube, or just watching even a time lapse. Also, I feel like it feels really relaxing for me to do that, even if I can't myself sit down and create. It does even make me feel a little more relaxed watching other people do it. So that is something I do all the time when I am not feeling great. It really will help you get through the hard times, while at the same time you're continuing to learn and grow, and you might see a new technique and try it out when you're feeling a little bit better, or, you know, learn a new skill, or, you know, a new style, a new color combination. You never know what you're going to find when you're consuming other people's art. So make sure you at least try to make time to do that. And that is my 12 tips. I hope you liked this video today. My Patreon and everything will be linked down below if you're interested in joining. And until next time, happy creating.